Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a moment that is bittersweet for me. I look around this house and I think about the 12 years that I've been here, and I know many of you don't realize that I have been here for 12 years. And I realize that, thank you, James Beverly, I love you for that. I realize that some of the most important moments of my life I have experienced with some of you in this room. Whether it was getting married, having Layla, or going through a divorce. And so it is a powerful moment for me to come and say farewell. I want to begin by thanking the great staff who help us every single day, from the clerk's office, the speaker's office, security guards and state patrolmen and women, the administrative assistants. Sheila Rainey was my first administrative assistant, and Jackie Hicks, who's held it down for me for the last few years, and all of the other administrative assistants who are often nameless, but do so much work, and over the years have offered me smiles, hugs, and words of encouragement because they watch what we do in here. And they notice the things that we say and what we do, and so I'm grateful for their work and all that they do to make sure that we are successful. I'm grateful for the friends that I've made in this room, and I'm going to name some of them. It doesn't mean that those of you who are also friends, I don't love you as well, but I've got to particularly thank folks like Mike Glanton and Josh Clark, Jimmy Pruitt, Mark Hamilton, Simone Bell, LaDon Jones, who have been great friends to me over the last few years. To my sorors, Carolyn Hughley and Nikki Randall, who took me in when I first arrived, and even over the many disagreements we've had on policy, you've continued to treat me in a sisterly way. I leave these last two people. First is Earl Earhart. And many would be surprised that I would name Earl Earhart as one of my very best friends in this house. And I want to share this story because I don't even think he knows this. But in 1999, I was a student at Spelman College. I was president of the NAACP chapter. And I led a march of students from the Atlanta University Center here to this state capitol to oppose one of Earl Earhart's bills. I didn't know his name, didn't know he was from a place called Cobb County. I just knew that we had to do whatever it took to kill that bill. And it ended up failing in committee by 1 vote. And no one would have told me that just 2 years later, 3 years later, I would run and serve with Earl Earhart. No one could have told me that we'd have some of the hardest battles on some of the most difficult issues in this chamber. And I know there was a time that we did not like each other very well. But as I think about the last couple of years, I think about the calls that we've had, the time that you reached out to me when you heard some difficult news. Every time I've ever come to you, you said yes, and here's how I'm going to help. And so I want to say thank you publicly. And I'm grateful for you because you gave me a chance. And you allowed yourself to get to know me, and I allowed myself to get to know you. And I thank you for that. I saved the best for last, who I don't see in the chamber, but it's Representative Sam Teasley, another one of my very best friends in this chamber. We've been through some very difficult times together, and when I dealt with some challenging times, he was there for me, and I hope he could say I was there for him. And although we have very opposite voting records, I know that there's not a soul in this room who cares more about me than Sam Teasley. And so I'm grateful for his friendship and his support. I also want to say thank you to a couple of other people like Ed Reinders and Willie Talton and John Yates, Because these are three people who I had very tumultuous relationships with over the years. But again, they opened their hearts and they got to know me and I got to know them. And I thank you for accepting me for who I am, and I've enjoyed accepting and loving you for who you are. Finally, I have to say thank you to my amazing seatmates. Michael Smith, who is new, but I have enjoyed getting to know and having talks about all kinds of things. Hugh Floyd, when I announced my run for state superintendent, was the only legislator there standing with me, and it's not because others didn't want to be there, but he stood with me and he encourages me and challenges me, and I thank you for your friendship. And so as I begin to close, I just want to say a couple of things. I'm proud of the work that we've been able to do here, and the members of my team are up in the gallery, and I have already thanked you, and I want to thank you again publicly. But together, we have brought over 1,000 people to this Capitol to teach them about the process, and so that they can hold me accountable on the issues that are important to them. I'm proud of the work that we've done in education to ensure that every child in this state gets a great education. And we've got more work to do. And even though it's been controversial, I'm also proud of the work that we've done to change the life trajectory of kids in this state because they now have public school choice. And although I still face some consequences from those choices, I have no apologies, and I'm proud to be able to empower kids and families. And I'm also proud of a bill that we passed because of constituents in my district who were faced with a flood in 2009, that because of that law that was passed, anyone in this state who's affected by a federally declared disaster will have help from the state. I've learned some powerful lessons in this chamber, and I hope to pass them on to you. Number one is patience. Everyone knows that if you have a bill that you want to pass, you think it could happen in a year, and sometimes it happens in 2 or 3. And so you learn patience and how to get things done, not maybe in your time or the chairman's time, but sometimes in God's time. I've learned to choose my battles. Those of you who were here 10, 12 years ago, you know that every time there was an issue, I was at this well, and I had a whole lot to say. But I've learned since then to choose my battles, to use my voice when it could be most influential, and to not have to speak on everything. I've learned to live for another day, that although these things are personal and we are passionate about them, that not only do we have to choose our battles, but we have to learn to fight for another day. I learned not to make it personal. If I had known 12 years ago the importance of relationships, and that's not always about the issues, but it's about getting to know people and who they are and why they are, it will help us make much better policy decisions in this room. Mr. Speaker, 2 of the things that I want to suggest and would love to see happen in this chamber. One is a conversation, a discussion that we could have about race, class, and gender. If all of us could sit in a room and talk about our experiences so that we could better understand our values and why we make the decisions that we make. And we'll call that the Teasley-Morgan discussion, because Sam and I have had that discussion many, many times. But I would also like to see an exchange program where we spend time in each other's districts. Can you imagine what it would be like to see Ed Reinders spend the day with Abel Mabel Thomas? Just ponder on that for a moment. But the most powerful lesson that I've learned in this chamber is the power of faith. That when you believe in God, when you believe in the things that are impossible, that He will not only do it for you, but He will make sure you know that it's Him and that you've got to give Him the credit. And so many people will say, why in the world are you leaving? You're in a safe seat and you could be elected for as long as you want. And that's true. I'm very blessed in my district, and people love me because of the work that we've done together. People also have said, why are you running? This is Georgia, and an African American could not win statewide right now. And I've heard that before. I heard it about 13 years ago when I was 22 years old, and I decided that I would run for state representative in Cobb County, of all places. People said that because of my skin color, because of me coming from the NAACP, because Cobb County had never voted for an African American, that it was impossible. But it was people like Calvin Smyrie and Tyrone Brooks who believed in the impossible. And it's why I'm standing here today. And so 12 years later, I am believing in God still and knowing that He can do anything, and I am running for state school superintendent. And this is not a political speech. You all know why I'm running for state school superintendent. But what I know more important than that is that God is good, and we can believe in Him and impossibilities because He can do anything. And so I leave you with my favorite quote. It's by Dr. Benjamin E. Mays. It says that every person is born into this world to do something distinctive and something unique. And if he or she doesn't do it, it will never be done. Against all the odds, I was born to be Cobb County's first African American state representative. Not a soul in this room was born to do that but me. But I wasn't born to do what you were called to do. And so in this moment, in this 40th day, and when all of you return, just remember why it is that God called you to be in this place at this particular time, to serve the people of Georgia who hold us responsible for doing the right things on their behalf. And I'm going to continue to do what God has called me to do. And my prayer is that this is not goodbye, but this is come and visit me across the street. But thank you for this incredible opportunity to serve with all of you. Finally, I say thank you to the constituents of District 39. I wouldn't be standing here 12 years later without them. I'm grateful for your faith in me and all of the support of the many people who stood with me and worked with me to make District 39 what it is. And I know that if I don't continue to do what God called me to do, it'll never be done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.